So we'll wait a couple more seconds for any stragglers, but um, we're gonna start today with. Oh, we're gonna start today with going through like any. I know you posted your battle plan in there, but anything that uh, you have like any issues with, or if you're good, you're good. Now that it's like the second time some of us are doing it, we have some guys that are doing it for the first time. So so maybe like anything for that thing in terms of execution, right? Because we say like you're struggling with a certain thing, but let's say like you're struggling with a certain thing on your growth plan, whatever that is. If it's nothing and you feel pretty confident about it, awesome. Let us know that, and then maybe like briefly one thing. If this is you guys both did your growth plan last quarter, or is this your first one?
Second time doing it.
Second. So maybe like something, because obviously we're recording this. So anything that um, you would have done differently or would tell somebody to do differently, uh, now looking back. So I'll start. I feel pretty good about this growth plan that I have going on. Um, Obviously, like for me, the hardest one to really go through is the self and the connection, like to really try and find tactics. Um, but it was really helpful last time. I was like doing a bunch. I had like a bunch of stuff that it just wasn't attainable to hit like five of these things in order to get like 1 point. So I just kind of simplified and really looked through like, for the self is be more empathetic, understanding, and a present husband and person. So like the simplest thing that I wasn't doing was I wasn't making sure I was logging everything and like having that be a tactic that if I knew that the good days I had, I logged. So I just said, okay, I just got to make sure I'm logging. And then got this one from my brother, no business after 7 p.m. unless, and that's to help with me being present at home, unless me and Sarah are on the same page. Right? Because sometimes a sale is going to come through and, that could impact the family. So, giving her kind of that decision to also be like, hey, like this is something I'm trying to do. So I'm feeling good about that. That's been pretty well. So I think just keeping it simple, and it might seem simple when you're putting it together, but by like week 8 or 9, things might actually get pretty difficult if you overwhelm yourself too much. So
Yeah, I mean, I think the like you hit it on the head there. When you actually log your stuff, you tend to do better. It's when you're like one thing that I think I
think Andre needs to upgrade his internet connection.
That's one thing I want to do is just be more consistent. Like I was pretty consistent in the beginning of the last period, and then like the last probably 2-3 weeks, or yeah, the last like definitely the last 2 weeks, but probably the last like 3 weeks just kind of fell off and just wasn't logging. Not that I wasn't doing stuff; it's just that stuff just kind of got in the way, and I kind of put it in cruise control and just forgot to write it down. But then you don't really have anything that memorializes it, right? It's like, all right, I think that I had a good week overall, but it's really cool just to physically go in and put a little bit of a comment on any given sections. And then in terms of like setting your goals and your tactics, I think I guess kind of going with what you said, but modifying it a little bit. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a few different, I guess, goals within any given vision, because I think that actually gives you flexibility, because you don't necessarily have to hit all of those on any given day, but if you can hit like one of them, right? So like let's say that one of your things is like connection, and if you had like, all right, I want to try to either connect with a friend, a family member, a coworker, or something, I think that just gives you a couple of different options. And it doesn't necessarily have to be by, phone or by email. It could be by an Instagram message or a Facebook message or something like that. I think just giving yourself more options of stuff to be successful in any given day, and it kind of allows you to see how you can make an impact in a lot of different ways. Like for like my connection thing, and even for contribution, I was kind of stuck on the that child's youth group for a while, and I'm like, listen, I can make a positive impact in a lot of different ways without necessarily just having to touch on that one specific area, right? It's like, all right, I have these 27,000 followers on Instagram. How can I potentially help these people out? So I'm sure that there are some people who maybe fall within that youth category. So like people who've been messaging me, I've just been spending more time just like answering their questions and be like, hey, if you ever need anything, just like reach out to me. Like there's this one dude who follows me. He lives in Africa, and he like makes these pretty funny videos of him like doing. He's not very good at CrossFit, but he makes these pretty funny videos of him like trying to do the workouts and showing that he's trying to get better. And so I just started like messaging back and forth with him. And so like he'll drop me a line probably once a week, just asking me about something. Like since the Open has come up, he's been asking me about strategy. So just thinking about different ways that you can make a positive impact on any given one of your goals without it having to be this rigid. I have to do this one thing every single day to hit my 1 point. Give yourself a couple of options.
Yeah. And I agree. Yeah, I guess, yeah, because what I was doing was being like, instead of options, it was like, do this, do this, do this. And if you don't do all three of those, you're out. And I was like,
Yeah,
yo,
that's too
that's
much.
intense. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of cool though with the one guy though. Like you could
Yeah.
that's kind of a content idea where you could just shoot like your live streams of a question he asked. I'm
Yeah.
sure all 27,000 people would want to know. So cool. That's good stuff.
For sure. Yeah.
John, welcome. We're just going over real quick. We're setting up our growth plans. Obviously, Q4 is ahead of us. I think this is the first growth plan you've done, correct? Yeah.
I had the one last time as well,
Okay.
but this first one I went really in depth on.
Okay. So, but yeah, just you guys can share real quick, like anything, if anything, because a lot of times, like we've addressed some of this, but anything you're struggling with right now with setting up your new Q4 that maybe you want some help with, tactics or anything. And then one thing that you would have done differently that now you're going to adopt for the Q4, or something you would tell yourself 3 months ago when you were starting about how to set it up. So either James or John.
I can go real quick. Setting up this growth plan, I think one thing I probably didn't spell it out in the first one when I had myself, when I had multiple things listed out in my mind, it was doing either a combination of those or one of those to kind of hit that mark, and have that be what I was looking for. So I kind of spelled it out better in this one that I made, as far as doing one of those. You can do a either or thing. And I think the career, the other portion with the careers is difficult, where I'm not necessarily like you, like I think majority of this group where it's the career is based on entrepreneurship. It's careers. I work at a 9 to 5, which I do enjoy, and it's not necessarily about like how I can like earn more, because I'm kind of capped. So basically, I have to build myself up to that, where I have to, there's certain goals I have to hit, which I think everyone has, but it's not based solely on me. If I just continue moving the bottom line, I'll make more money, get promoted, but I also have to find ways to stand out. So now my goal is, all right, how can I be a better leader? So just work on certain things. So this next job I'm going to, I'll be the leader on the site on that. So I'll be the sole contributor. So I want to be a better leader. Been working on that for the past couple of months. So it's like, all right, how do I do that? So then the next quarter, it might be something else. Like, how do I, instead of being a leader, it's like, how do I actually, if I have someone that's under me, how do I actually lead that single person? So I guess that's probably what I would get more geared towards. I just want to build myself up that way. And then one thing I didn't do very well was the contribution. I kept the same contribution goal, except for I added a tangible thing of journaling about it, because I didn't journal about it. And so if I would text somebody and they didn't text back, I would check that and say, all right, good enough. I reached out. So now I need to journal. I need to journal about it. Why? How am I contributing to that person's life? And then I'm also part of a group called Lost and Found, that I had a friend started and I'm a part of. So I'm doing lessons for that, and then also trying to post on social media. So those are but what I would do is just make sure there's a tangible thing and tie it to whatever it is. That's something I would tell myself 3 months ago. You're muted, Mike.
I stole this idea from you. I when you said you were going to print your thing off, I was like, I'll do my tech way. And I must say this quarter, I'm like, I have it up on my wall. And I mean, it's like just red X's. And I'll journal on my computer, but it's so much easier to just get up and be like, all right, check it, got it. So
Yeah, that's what I did. I carried around a book. I had it and I folded it up and I had it with me every day. And so I'd check it out about lunchtime. Hey, check this, check this, check this. Oh, I got to do this. And so it was a good reminder to have like a tangible asset.
yeah, it's super simple and old school, but it's super effective. So good stuff. What about you, John Hussey?
All right, so I guess the one big change I made with my growth plan this quarter is I made it much more specific. Um, so one thing I kind of realized, I was talking with a buddy of mine about weightlifting competitions that we wanted to do and all of that, and he kind of said just offhand and just you lift a lot better and you're a lot more focused when you have an actual goal, tangible goal or set date in mind that you know what you're working towards. And I realized that was true across all things. So one thing I tried to do with my growth plan for this quarter is set those goals, both long term and quarterly. So instead of just, like in conditioning, I want to stay healthy. Yeah, I want to stay healthy, but actually setting a very specific thing that I want to accomplish this quarter. That way I can then look at those daily tactics and see how it relates. Um, so I know, okay, I'm doing this. Here's why I'm doing it instead of something, I want to be healthier when I'm 60 years old. So yeah, I'm not going to eat this oatmeal cream pie today because it's going to affect me when I'm 60 years old. Now I don't want to eat this oatmeal cream pie because I need to get my weight down so I can be as strong as possible so I can hit this qualifying total. Um, so that's one really big change. Uh, and then kind of from last week, 3 months ago, I did the initial one, wasn't super specific, but trying to do too much with it. Um, with this new one, I really tried to focus in on what it is I actually want to do and want to accomplish. Um, and being specific, looking at the overarching thing that I was trying to accomplish. So instead of having a million different projects all working towards the same thing, kind of what you guys were saying, having, all right, here's different things that need to happen. If you do one of these, at least one of these every day, you're working towards that goal. So trying to set it up to where I'm not being overwhelmed with a million different things, but also having a very clear path in mind going forward.
Awesome. Sweet. All good stuff. Which segues to an idea that I had, and I want to see your guys' feedback on this. So, at the far right of our sheets, we have those percentages, basically your grade for that week. And I was thinking that maybe just so we can all stay accountable to one another is maybe like before the Monday of that new upcoming week. So over the weekend or whatever, that Sunday, we just post our, I don't know, connection 79%, conditioning 80%, and we just post it. And I think that would be beneficial for me because it keeps me kind of engaged. But then I put my numbers out there, so I'm able to see. So I was thinking of maybe presenting that obviously here. So I'd like to just say, okay, just give your percentage for each quadrant, and then maybe we could verbalize it or I guess write it out of like pick the quadrant that you struggle with the most this week, and maybe what's one thing that you're going to do to bring that up. But put it in writing because I do think that obviously we not everyone's here on this call and some people watch the replays, but I do know that people are looking at the stuff in Slack, so maybe it's also just putting some of that out there too. So is that something you guys think would be worth giving it a go?
Yeah, I think so. I think it'll hold people accountable.
Cool.
Honestly, I think it'll make people want to journal and keep their shit up if they know that they're gonna have to report it every week.
Sweet. All right. Cool. I'll kind of make a post then, and let's we'll start that then this week going forward for that Monday. So we'll post all that in there. We'll just call them like, I don't know, like weekly. I don't know. I'll come up with some name if you guys come up with a cool name that's catchy. All right. So I wanted to go into the next part, which obviously we're going into the financial quarter, working on the personal growth and wellness phase of that, or wealth phase of that. So we're reading the book, Richest Man of Babylon. By show of hands, anybody like halfway or halfway? Okay, quarter.
I'm at page 7. I'm at page 80, 77 or 80 something.
Okay.
So I'm halfway now.
Okay, cool. So I have some notes here that I'm gonna split screen and show. And if you aren't halfway, it's probably some spoilers, but this stuff's pretty straightforward. But the most straightforward stuff like printing off your growth plan and recording it, sometimes people just don't do. So I'm gonna share my screen and we're just gonna kind of go down. What's up, Chris? All right, I'm gonna share here.
Sorry I'm late, guys.
All good. All right. Sorry, my desktop is a mess. All right. So we're gonna go basically along this journey. This is just kind of the notes, 7 cures for a lean purse. And this is something that like we've talked about. And I'm laying this out here because then I'm gonna show kind of like a template of a profit loss / net worth template that we can begin to use, and it's going to be much more in depth. So understand that everyone's journey and where you're starting at is different. I just didn't want to make it too basic and have some people be way over that and vice versa. So we'll kind of go through that. And I just want to reiterate again that you don't need to share any of your stuff. I'm really putting this out there to just present this. This is what's been effective for me. I've taken this from some of the books that we've Rich Dad Poor Dad, if you guys have ever read that. Dave Ramsey, all the stuff that we will be reading. But I kind of like condense it into a template. So in that, in this book, they give it like set in Babylonian times, a lot of different short stories. It's about the guys. And one of the biggest things to start the purse, the fattening, is save 10% of all you earn. So if you earn, in this sense, it was earn 10 gold coins, you save 1 gold coin and you hold it. And then you learn to live off of those 9. Which is something that, can be challenging. And then we look, okay, how do you live off those 9? Then you have to really get down into the weeds with your budgeting. So when we look at that, that comes down to all your expenses versus, your fixed costs. So we can think of like the housings, the immediate bills, like the health insurances, the taxes, the food, the shelter that you need to put over your family. And then we have all the non-fixed costs that can be variable, and that's really the stuff that we really want to focus on if you're not achieving where you're at. And that's what we're going to kind of look at in the template. But I really like this quote here. And a weed grows in a field where a farmer leaves space for their roots. Even so freely do the desires grow in men whenever there is a possibility to be gratified. Meaning, and I've been victim to this, the more we make, sometimes the more we spend. And we just don't, we can make more money and we're like, hey, I'm saving. But when I look back, especially now leaving New York, I look how much money I did spend on things that I didn't really think I was spending. And you see all that you could have saved or done differently. So, you definitely have to know where your money is going, and it doesn't need to get super nitty gritty at times, but it is helpful to at least have a good overview. Just like when you look at your diet and calories and nutrition, you can always shoot to save more than 10%, but a lot of these kind of like foundational books have been saying, try and work yourself up to a 10% savings rate. And if I'm I'm just going to hit all this. We're not going to go through all this because some of the stuff gets pretty advanced, but I'm just kind of going through what the book had. Make the goal multiply. So this is things where like investments or real estate. It doesn't mean necessarily investing in real estate. Maybe it means owning your home. You're putting money down towards something that you're building equity, and your dollar today might be worth $1.20 in the future. Guard from losses. So, the losses sometimes you might be the reason why it's losing it, right? Sometimes maybe setting up automated savings or figuring out, okay, what can you save, and then learn to structure your lifestyle around that might be the best way to protect yourself from, your own treasure loss is stopping your own self. And I'm not sure if it's any of us, but I know a lot of people spending habits. Sometimes they just, fast food here, coffee here, it can happen. Um, and then, make the dwelling profitable investment. So if you're not a home owner, and I know some of us like in the city, renting, obviously it's a renter market, but, just try and find ways that you can at least start to make your dwelling profitable. Maybe that's trying to own, maybe that's, Andre, I know you're working some things, you're trying to increase the value of it. So there's different ways that you can do that. It reduce the cost of livings over time, increases your wealth. And then all this other stuff, which this isn't the sheet, you guys can go through this. I don't want to drive through this right now because this is some super like nitty gritty stuff that, to be honest, I have some experience with, but I know there's other guys that have a lot more in this group. So I would love to have them on here. And then really, I think that the next thing is increase the ability to earn. This is kind of something you talked about, James, where you might be in a situation where you might not be able to physically go out there, start a business, turn on a switch and make more money, right? Like Andre, you could, if you want to make more money, you could put more hours in the gym. You could, get out there and kick up your marketing and just be a freaking beast. But sometimes it might mean you have to invest in yourself. So maybe it's getting more education, or maybe it's taking an internship and getting more experience, or maybe it's like for me, when I moved here, uh, I had to network. Like my first 2 months were just networking and just like going getting coffee with random people, which for me was a very big step because as much as I like enjoy and I'm a personal person, it was definitely challenging to put myself in a situation. So there's other ways, right? Because if you're sitting here and you're like, dude, I can't save money, I'm kind of like staying afloat. Maybe there's other ways that you can set yourself up to have the ability to earn in the future. And then when that moment comes, instead of you made more money, now I'm going to spend more money, you made more money, and that gap is what you then can pull to save. So just some little teachings that they had in here, that was in the book. And this is a pretty old book. So I'll post that in there so you guys can go. But any questions or feedback on the book or anything that we covered thus far? No.
Real quick, I know when I started reading it last week, it was just good to like it pointed out, okay, start saving first, and it felt nice that I've done that at least. But then everything after that, I haven't done. I haven't invested in anything. I don't have any property. So just the fact that it was pointed out, now I'm like, okay, cool. I need to do these things. And like even today, I just had a conversation with one of my clients on his investments, and then he gave me a little bit of advice on how I can go about it. So
Yeah, it's hard. Like money's hard, man. It's hard. It's hard. There's a reason why most people don't have a lot of it. And most of Americans live paycheck to paycheck because it's extremely difficult to modify your life, especially when you can't. Like a lot of people just aren't in a position where they can say, all right, I can just take this extra money. Like I was talking to Dewar about this earlier. Like there's certain people in the world across the world who, when they come home at night, think about a single parent, right? Like they don't have the luxury of saying, all right, well, I can put this into my 401k and this into my life insurance account. Like they're like, fuck, man, how am I going to feed my kids tomorrow? So it's definitely tough. And there are extremes on either end, but I think being cognizant of it and at least trying to make little better habits is for the best, right? Like think about our growth plan. Think about if there's something little you can do every day that can add up over time, right? Maybe it's something as simple as saying, hey, you know what, I'm gonna take $1 and put it into a jar every day. That's a way that you can just start to save money, because I think we're so big picture. We're like, all right, I
Can you guys hear?
anymore. People just don't have change jars.
He goes in and out.
Or yeah, are you losing me?
I lost you. We lost you a little bit there, but we heard the
Okay.
change jars and all that.
Yeah. But yeah, the whole idea is just like start small. It doesn't have to be you changing your life and putting hundreds of or even dozens of dollars, but start with $1 a day, a couple of pennies a day, and then over time that can start to add up. Start simple.
Yeah, totally. I agree. Oh, and also a lot of this stuff too, and I really like this book to start with because it's kind of a more digestible, tells you stories. But we are going to get into some talking really about, if you aren't at that space, or if like even if you are, how you can become better in getting to that space. We'll go through the Rich Dad Poor Dad, which is our November book that really talks about like how you can look at what's coming in your household and leaving your household. So it's going to be good for like either if you already have that stuff set up just to check in, but then also if you don't have it set up, it's very clean cut in terms of how you can look at everything coming in and out and really start to set a budget like you would for any business or anything. And then, I just want to continue to kind of beat this in with you guys. In December, then we go through another book, which is Dave Ramsey. He believes on Money Talk, like CNN, like way back. He has some stuff like Total Money Makeover. So, if you guys want to check these books out and get reading prior, awesome. But this whole kind of process helped me get out of like 80,000 of loans and debts in like 3 years. Now, obviously, that's an extreme case, but I was also in New York City. I went from making like 15K as a Equinox floor trainer with a bunch of expenses. Like, we know what rent is in New York City, to where every year I earned more and more. And how I did that was like what you said, James. I got more education. I continued to like put sweat equity into things until I was able to continue to make more money, like 4 times, 5 times more money. And during that whole time, I lived in the same apartment, so like my fixed cost didn't really rise, maybe $100 a year because the rent goes up. So I didn't have a house equity, but you can still be successful doing other things. It's just, I realized at the time I couldn't buy a house, so I had to put my money elsewhere. That was, as Andre's doing now, he's putting money into his business. So like that business is now paying dividends. Same thing with my business. So there's a lot of different ways, and there's really no clean cut way. So I just want to make that clear. But it is a case by case thing, and I really hope over the course of the next 3 months we can really hit January and you can start to kind of see these different perspectives and say, hey, like I can't save 10% right out of the gates, but like Andre said, maybe you can save 3%, 2%, right? So like I think a cool exercise would be like, look at what you bring in, what your household brings in, and say, okay, what is 10% of that? Divide that by 12 months, divide that by 30 days. Every day, how much is that? And then just kind of play around to be like, okay, how could I save $8 a day? Some days it might be not that much. Some days maybe you go spend 30 and you're like, oh shit. Like I know when I was in college, I never had money, but somehow I could go spend $60 at the bar. Like it's crazy stuff like that. So those little things, and that's kind of what we talked about. Well, you mentioned like, I think it can be powerful to say, I'm going to pay myself first. And then I got to figure out how I can fit all my other stuff in. And it is kind of a scary thing. At first I started doing that when I moved here. I knew exactly what our costs would be because we have a fixed mortgage. My car payment's the same. Everything's the same. And I said, I don't want to get rid of what I have my savings going. We're going to make ourselves live off of this. And it was challenging, and it still can be challenging at times. We have to make decisions like, maybe we should just stay in and eat, or, let's not go do this. But I think as we continue to grow, in my case, we're making more, then we can really start to like expand upon that. But, we're still staying true to our long-term goals. So it does take discipline. But that's my goal, is that everyone can kind of do something like that for themselves going forward. So those are kind of where we're at with things. But I'm going to switch over screens and go to this guy. You guys can't see it yet. And I'm going to share in here. Like Andre and I talked about this. Like Andre said in the past, his finance background, Jay's finance background. I'm not a finance background. So I'm more of like your anecdotal evidence kind of guy, self-taught. Those guys, so we have a lot of good resources in here. So, I want you guys to really take advantage of having, like, we have 8 to 10 people in here that you have their phone numbers, you have contact with them. We've learned some really deep things about each other. So don't be afraid to reach out and, kind of just see where people are coming from and extend a help or ask for help. So in here, it's pretty self-explanatory in terms of you're going to put the yellow cells is where you're touching. Um, I made some notes here, and this is kind of different. If you're like a wage person and you have wages, you might not necessarily have to worry about estimated taxes, like for maybe like us on 1099. So some things, or maybe like when we look at here, we have, different things that maybe you're not doing yet, or so you would just leave them blank. I just wanted to throw the kitchen sink at you. That way I'm not leaving anything out. So essentially when we look at like a profit loss, and this can be applied to your business, whatever, but we look at like your earned income. So, you'd have to give some pretty good estimates. I do it before taxes because I am a 1099, but if you're somebody who gets it after taxes, then you would just not have to worry about putting, your expenses down there because they're already taken out. So that's kind of up to your situation. Passive income, some of us, like I don't really have any, like real estate, but like Mark owns real estate, so there's that passive income. The business, if you own a business like Andre, or if you have some sort of royalties, whatever, like I said, these are more advanced things, but these are things that can really make an impact. And I'm a huge fan of trying to find ways that have passive income. So you put those in there, that's your total. Non-retirement. So if you have other investments, mutual funds, stocks that aren't your 401k or IRA, they'd go here. You could just put kind of a general, I know it goes up and down, but if you look at your reports, you'll be able to find kind of what it looks like. And I have all this stuff on it. This is a monthly sheet. I should put that there. Just so you guys know what numbers, but I mean, you could do this for annually. It would all reflect the same. Expenses. So when we look at here, we have like our fixed. So like I said, I have fixed expenses because I have to pay 1099. If you were a W-9 or somebody and didn't pay taxes after you got paid, then you would just leave it zero. Payroll deductions. You could really change this to whatever. Healthcare, that could come out of there. Housing, rent, insurance, mortgage insurance. Know those numbers. Utilities, right? Like I have in here power, water, phone. I have Netflix, TV, and then obviously like trash. Like here, I have to pay for all those services. So you really just look at what that is, and then you have your transportation, any of those things, MTA card, subways, insurance, and then food will be variable. But I think this one is something that we could also look at. Like I would say for that, personally speaking, I don't really throw in too much like eating out money, because I'm like, if we lost our jobs and we had to figure out, okay, this is exactly what I need to survive every month, like to stay afloat, live the same lifestyle, in terms of like, still have clothes on my back, roof over my head. Because that number, say that number is $2,000, right? And that's what I need to make every month for me to be able to care for myself and my wife. Then that number is something that we can use going forward when we talk about like how much we want to try and have in savings and like an emergency fund, which we'll get to in different books. But that's how I look at it. And I think as I'm going through this, if you guys ever have any things, like please like chime in and let me know. And then all this stuff, you can see it's unbolded. This is stuff that like you might not even be at, and that's totally fine. Then we look at, okay, like your 401k or retirements, all this stuff, what it is. So those would be your expenses. This one is, that could be payments, or you could also put down. So this is like, if you have $3,000 in credit card debt, for this purpose, I typically would have put down like my minimum payment, just to see like what would be the minimum. Now, when we talk about credit card debt, that like that's where people can really get screwed up. So we just want to make sure like when we put it down here, we get to our liabilities, you put whatever you owe in that. Assets, like I said, there's a lot here. So you might have a bunch of zeros, you might not. All this stuff. So you touch the yellow cells, everything's going to populate. What you then can look at is, after this monthly stuff, it should give you a what's left over. So, if you're kind of in that, right on that threshold of zero, like it means you're kind of right here. negative, positive balance, but it can help you start to adjust where your stuff's at. Like I said, I had to worry about getting a home and everything, so I had to go through all this like FICO scores. This is really just the sheet that I use to put all my stuff on one spreadsheet, and then all this stuff will populate, and it will give you two different numbers. But that's just because sometimes people will look at your house. I'm not sure if you guys remember the housing crash, but some people will say like your house is equity. So people were like buying houses and then the crash happened and they actually had negative equity. So some people include the house in your net worth. Some people don't. So I just presented both. But any questions on that?
I think it's a pretty robust and good thing to start with. Go ahead, Chris.
No, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's pretty legit. Like,
cool.
I have when my wife and I first started trying to do our budget, we had something similar, and honestly, it was kind of overwhelming. It was tough to use, and it was almost like you're putting this huge wall in front of you. Like, oh fuck, we got to do our budget and this and that. So, one thing that works for me was we put our fixed expenses, and then for like 2 months we didn't stress it out too much, but we did track every single expense we had, whether it was a $2 coffee or $1 that I gave to a homeless person, whatever it is. And so we expense every single dollar, and after 2 months we're like, okay, where are we spending too much money? And then that's where we started making changes. And then once we had that kind of down pat, then it was easier to fill in the blanks on something like this. Just because, again, like when we first started and we had something that was like so like legit, kind of like what you're presenting here, it almost like, yeah, it seemed like it was impossible to do. But, when we took the other route where we just kind of did what we were doing anyway, and then started filling in the blanks, it was a lot more manageable. But this is really cool. I definitely want to like use this template.
Yeah. I think
yeah, I was gonna say, Chris, I think that's like brilliant that you guys did that. That's like if a client comes to me and says, "Hey, tell me how to eat. Like, what should I do?" I always ask them to send me a full week of what they eat, what they drink, when they eat it, because a lot of it could be falling on deaf ears instead of you just saying, hey, do this, do this, do this. I think it's a great idea for you to actually look at where you're at and where you're spending dumb money before you try to reel everything in. Because you can be like, oh, shit. Like you feel, I feel like it's less shocking to the system when it's already sitting there and you're like, oh, I'm stupid. I've been spending like $300 on tacos every month. And you're like, oh, I could definitely spend only $200 on tacos and save $100.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's important to, right? Because it goes back to like, there's multiple ways we can do this. And in Dave Ramsey's book, which is coming up, he was huge, and I was huge on the envelope system. So basically, like you have your money, take the cash out, put it in white envelopes, food, whatever you label it. And if whatever's left over, you don't get any more, whatever's left over, then you can save it. And that's how people, it was kind of almost like I would make it like a Whole30. It's a very like intensive, some people did it long-term. So I did it, and it was like super challenging, but it allowed me to get a better snapshot. Like, okay, I always had money left over in this thing, so I'm good there, but I was always trying to use more money in this. So that's where I got to focus. So yeah, I mean, I think that's important for the people that are watching this replay is like, this is like, I look at like, if I always had sand and sand was all the money, this is going to help you get a pretty good snapshot of everything that you're holding, but there's still cracks. So it's not the end all. But it is a starting point. But like Chris said, there's multiple ways you can start. There's apps you can look at. Maybe we can have conversations in there, but yeah. So, that's why I'm a huge fan of trying to save first, just because like for me, it was always a challenge to be like, I want to get that 10% savings rate, and I'd get it. And I'd be like, how do I get 2 more %? And I was noticing that I was always coming back to like the things that I was always trying to spend more money on, which is just like random spending that I didn't really realize was there. So, just two different viewpoints on that. But I think it's important to address again that this is not an end all. So,
Dude, what do you think about adding in a little something in there that's like a fun savings goal? I think it could be mentally very good for people. You have to like, all right, so I'm saving this much money for life because I want to have X number of dollars in my savings.
He went out again.
yeah. So I think he's, but I do
Cutting
agree.
out.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
you're talking. So, and that's,
Yeah.
I guess those are the readings, but I like, for me, I think that like getting $1,000 of liquid savings is like the first step, which some people already have that, and that's great. But I think that like if you can get $1,000 somehow saved, then you learn certain principles that could then help you save more money. So like when I went back to like, okay, you need to do this because you need to look at what is your fixed cost, right? Like for where I'm at right now is $2,000 or whatever. Let's say $2,000 a month. Like that's what I need to put food on the table, clothes on our back, pay for the things I need to pay for. So depends on who you are. Like we're all trainers, right? So like Dave Ramsey suggested 3 to 6 months of your living cost in a savings account for like you lose your job or like you get injured and your insurance doesn't cover it, like something like bad, right? So for us, we were trainers. I have insurance, but if I don't work, I don't get paid. I wanted to have 6x of my monthly cost. So that was 6 times 2 is $12,000, right? In this scenario. Once you get to that point, like I think that's a lot to save. Once you get to that point, then it's like, okay, I have my emergency fund, which is that 1,000, maybe the washer breaks or your car breaks down. I have my 12,000, my 3 to 6 times my monthly expenses in a savings account in case something happens, right? Or like say Sarah had a kid, right? She would be working, she gets maternity leave, but say something goes wrong and now I need to try and figure out how I'm going to pay for everything that she's not working for. So it's like all those little things can happen, and those are real scenarios. Once you get to that point, then it's like, hey, good, you got these savings. Now we can look at the other things, like how can you maybe up your investments? Because the cool thing is if you took you 6 months to save $1,000, right? And say I'm just throwing out math here, but I think it's like $30 a week or some shit like that. Yeah, let's call it $30 a week. 30, 40. Whatever. Say however long it takes you, were saving $30 a week, you hit this milestone. You continue to do that, you hit this milestone. Well, what's happened is a lot of people, if they aren't paying this out first, say, hey, I've reached my things, I'm gonna go celebrate and I'm gonna go spend $30 a week. Instead, you can take this $30 and you can now reallocate it to something else. So you don't change your living ways. So that's kind of the goals that I shot for in the beginning, was earn that first 1,000, like earn that first dollar as an entrepreneur. Like I still remember the first dollar I made. It was freaking awesome. Like, so I think that's important. So those are, maybe I can add those in there, like get $1, trying to work to 3 to 6 months, your family expenses. And then from there, then that's where kind of things open up for you. Does that help?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's really all I had, honestly. Was I wanted to just leave enough time for that. And obviously I think when people sit down and do it, there's probably going to be a lot more questions, but, and it's really, if you guys want to go more into this, like the framework of it, I really borrowed a lot of these ideas and these systems from Rich Dad Poor Dad, which is a really good book. We're going to be reading in November, but if you guys want to kind of use that to kind of read along with it, it's a really cool book because it's a book. It's a more of an actionable book than just like kind of like a story book. It's definitely much more of like a boom, boom, boom. And then obviously, Andre, like the questions you had, what are some like goals? Like Dave Ramsey's Total Money Makeover it's a 10-step process. And, we didn't even talk about like, in there he talks about like to get the snowball going, save your first 1,000. Then he talks about get 3 to 6 months of living expenses in the savings. Then once you get there, you have to look at your debt, student loans, credit cards, pay off your biggest debt, right? So a lot of people, it's credit cards. You might jump past step 3 and then you go to step 4, and it might be, so for instance, when I paid off my last student loan payment, I like had a bunch of money that I was saving, and I had like $10,000. I was paying an interest rate of like 3.5%. Looking back now, I should have been like, if I took that 10K and invested into something that got me 8%, I could still have 4% and to use my interest to pay off my debt, right? Those are like some things that I could have looked at, but at the time I just didn't want to carry debt, which it was just a decision. And that was just like something I felt, but those are all kind of things that he lays out in that book. It's, that once you get kind of off the ground, like anything with your fitness, once you just kind of start doing it, then you can start to see different avenues. So that's a cool book too. The Total Money Makeover is also a good one. But all right, dudes.
Cool.
Yeah, that's a good one too. I like a lot of his stuff, honestly. I like the way he writes.
Cool. I'll get Total Money Makeover. That's the next one you said?
I have to look at the order. I
Dad?
think that's because we have Rich Dad Poor Dad, and then we have Total Money Makeover, and then the Richest Man of Babylon. So like those are like my big 3 that I really like to try and just stay fresh on. So
Cool.
Yeah, I'm almost done with the Babylon book. It's really good.
yeah, it's definitely like when I read books like finances. I mean, I like to have more of like here's the plan, let's execute, yada yada yada, step by step. But it's still a cool book to kind of like get the story across.
Cool. Yeah.
Like,
Did you share the notes on it?
I will. They were hyperlinked in last week's call brief, but I'll share them in the thing.
Okay, cool.
But
Cool.
all right, guys.
Hi, bros.
Cool. Let's post our numbers up this end of the week.
Cool.
We'll get these other guys in this group going.
All right, then.
Let's get rich, bitch.
Woo! All right. See you guys.
Later, guys.
See you guys.
Peace.